Hi everyone, welcome to this session. In this very session, we'll be seeing different methods that we can use to get our insole. We'll be making our insole, but what are those things we need in making our insole? So there are different methods that you can choose to produce a high heel insole, but I'll be showing you one of the methods in this very session. For a better understanding of this very session, the session is divided into two very important parts for you to be able to follow through and understand much better. The first part, you learn how to design the patterns of the insole and also mold the shank of the insole. Then the second part will be coupling the insole to have a better understanding of what you are working on. And what are those things that you need in making your insole? The first thing you need your last. The last is very, very important because it has the shape of the high heel. That's the heel. You can see here is wide open to show the height of your heel. The last come in different shapes, different sizes, depend on the kind of heel you are working on. And the second thing you need is your shank. The shank need to conform to the shape of the heel of the last in order to have a perfect result. And the third one is you need your fiber board. The fiber board comes into two types. We have the backer board pattern and the fiber board pattern. But because of this very session, you might not have access to a backer board. Fiber board will be very, very okay to be used. So in this very session, we are using the fiber board to design our insole. So let us go and continue from here.
In making the insole, the first thing that you need is your last, your masking tape, your cutter. You can get your scissors, your abrasive, your paper. All of these are needed in order to have a very good and smooth running of your insole. So right away, we're going to tape our last with the use of the masking tape. We'll start from the front part to the back part. It depends on how you are comfortable with it. So right away, we're taping it from one end to the other. After taping the last, we'll now outline the feather edges of the last with the use of abrasive, or you can use your cutter as the case may be. So I'm outlining it to be visible so that we can cut. During the first stage of the pattern cutting, you will notice that the last was taped from the top to the bottom to have every pattern available. But for the sake of this session, and we're actually apart from one another, everybody is using the available last that is possible, but the method still remains the same. As you can notice, the last is now taped. We're cutting the parts now to make sure that we have a very good feather edge that is not having complication. So trim the edges and make sure everything is in order. Now it's time to remove the tape and place it on our paper. Once you do that, automatically you have your masking and your insole ready, because it's a perfect cut that you don't have to add anything. Cut at the edges, your insole is ready. Let us get the second part of the insole. The insole comprises of two main patterns that we'll be using. That is the main pattern, which is this very one, and the second pattern is going to be at least one quarter away from the front part of the shoe. That's 3/3. of the pattern. The reason is you want to have the shank buried in between the insole. Sometimes you can choose to use the insole a complete length. It's still okay and good, but sometimes we do that not to have too rigid material that will make the shoe more heavier and not comfortable. So now we're taking the total length of the shank that I'll be using so that we'll know how to give the allowances, because from the back part we need to give a reasonable allowance where the shank will rest properly on the heel. If it's not resting properly on the heel, you will have a very big problem, because the two most important thing about the insole is the heel, the shank. So if that shank is not properly set, you have problem. Now let's have the total length. I will be using 1/3. I will be cutting 1/3 away from the front part of the heel to get my shank and my distance for the backer board. But what we'll be doing is to make sure that the shank is properly placed with the allowances. So this is an allowance now between the shank where it's going to rest to cover the shank properly, both from the front part and also at the back part. The distance given is 20 millimeter, that is 2 centimeter away at least, for the shank to be able to cover properly. You can even add it either 3 centimeter away, or you just use a full insole as you mold the shank. It's a choice that you can make, but mostly make sure that the distance is okay, that is covering the insole very well. Right, cut it carefully out and let's go to the next process. Now we're done with the creation of the pattern. The next process now is to mold the shank. In molding the shank is just about to force the shank to take the contour of the last with the use of hammer and a block rather, or anything that you can place it on. It could be on the last or on the block. So but here I'm using a block to help me because it's more rigid. The last could be injured and I can find more difficulty. Just check from here, you discover that the shank is not laying properly on the last. Let us go ahead and mold the shank properly by the use of the hammer to get the shape and force it to take the contour. There is a machine for molding of insole, but because you are doing what we call the handmade, you need patience in order to do this. It's a game of patience to make high heels. This is how far we can go. Continue to heat and make sure your shank is conformed to the shape of the last. Patience will give you the best result that you need. Thank you. This is how far we can go on this very part. Let us go to the next part of the insole making of a high heel shoe. Now our shank is molded and ready for the next process.